$485 million. That is the number. Hold it in your head for a moment. $485 million is what Fox paid for the United States broadcast rights to this World Cup. It is the total commitment, including the bonus tied to the tournament being held in the United States, according to reporting from the New York Times this past May. $485 million. The same New York Times piece estimated the fair market value of those rights at somewhere between $1 billion and $1.5 billion. Read that again. Fair market value, somewhere between $1 billion and $1.5 billion. Paid price, $485 million. That is the single image at the center of this story. A broadcast deal worth, on the open market, 2 to 3 times what was actually paid for it. And the company that benefited from that gap is now broadcasting the largest sporting event on the planet to the largest sports market on the planet for what appears, on paper, to be the bargain of the century. How did that happen? Let me walk you through the picture, because the picture explains a lot of what you are seeing on your screen this summer. According to that New York Times reporting, FIFA gave Fox a 1-cycle extension on the broadcast rights at the then current rate. In exchange, Fox agreed not to pursue legal action over an earlier decision involving the moving of the 2022 World Cup to Qatar and the disruption that caused to the broadcaster's planning. That deal was made years ago. The implication of the deal, however, is being felt right now, in the summer of 2026, as the games air on Fox channels with what some critics have described as comparatively thin coverage, smaller studio investment, and a lighter promotional footprint than a tournament of this scale would normally command. Think about what that means. The biggest sports market in the world is watching the biggest football tournament in history on a network that paid less than half of what the rights were worth. That is the image. $485 million. Hold it. Now here's the second part of the image, because it makes the first part sharper. 2 weeks ago, during the opening match of the tournament, Fox was reported to have run advertising spots during what FIFA classifies as a hydration break. A hydration break is not a normal commercial window. Under FIFA's own broadcast rules, those breaks are intended for the players, the on-field officials, and the in-stadium experience. Running ads over them violates FIFA's advertising rules for broadcasters. The Guardian reported on this on the 14th of June. Sport Resolutions, an independent sports law publication, covered the story on the 15th. Yahoo Sports ran a piece summarizing the regulatory question. The awful announcing publication followed with deeper context. Fox had violated the rules. What did FIFA do about it? Nothing. Read that twice. FIFA, the governing body, the institution that wrote the rules in the first place, decided not to punish Fox for the violation. The official explanation, as reported by The Guardian and others, was that the broadcaster had misread when the referee called the hydration break and inserted the ads accordingly. A technical mistake. An accidental violation, no penalty. Picture that against the $485 million deal. You sold a broadcaster the largest sporting event in the world at, by some estimates, less than half of its market value. That broadcaster then violated your advertising rules during the opening match of the tournament. And your response, after a few days of consideration, was to issue no punishment. That image, that single image, tells you almost everything you need to know about the relationship between FIFA and its biggest American broadcast partner. Think about what that means for the integrity of the rules. Every other broadcaster in the world watched that decision. Every other commercial partner watched it. Every regulator watched it. The message they received was clear. The rules apply, except when they do not, except when the broadcaster is large enough, important enough, embedded enough to be treated as a partner rather than a vendor. That is not a regulatory framework. That is a relationship hierarchy. And that hierarchy has consequences that ripple far beyond a single advertising window. Smaller national broadcasters around the world, when they negotiate their own packages with FIFA in future cycles, will look at this precedent. They will see that the largest American partner can violate a clearly written rule and walk away clean. They will adjust their own behavior accordingly. They will push the edges of what is acceptable in their own markets. Some will get caught. Some will not. The integrity of FIFA's broadcast rules, in the years to come, will be measured not by what is written in the contracts, but by who has the leverage to break those contracts without consequence. Think about what that means for the long-term value of the World Cup brand. A tournament whose own rules are negotiable is a tournament whose value rests on perception rather than substance. Sponsors will eventually notice. Advertisers will eventually notice. Regulators in different jurisdictions will eventually notice. And the question, at some point in the next cycle, or the cycle after that, will be why anyone should treat a FIFA rule as binding when the largest American broadcaster was excused from one on the opening weekend of the biggest tournament in the sport's history. Now, to be fair, let me give FIFA's defenders their strongest argument. A misread on the timing of a hydration break is, in the operational chaos of a live broadcast, a plausible mistake. Insertion windows are decided in real time. Producers are juggling multiple feeds, multiple commercial slots, multiple international cuts. A single missed cue can trigger an ad that should not have aired. From that angle, punishing a broadcaster on the opening day of the tournament for a technical mistake would set a tone of confrontation that helps no one. FIFA can argue, with some logic, that the relationship matters more than the violation in this particular case. That is the Steelman, stated honestly. Now the counter, with the same evidence. The rules either apply to everyone, or they apply to no one. You cannot fine a small federation for an advertising violation in a qualifier and then wave away a hydration break violation by your largest American broadcaster during the opening of your World Cup. The rules become reputational, not regulatory. And the moment the rules become reputational, the institution loses its claim to be a neutral governing body. Picture the image again. $485 million. Hold it. Now look at what else is happening in the same week. Fox is broadcasting the tournament to the United States. The tournament is being held in the United States. The host country has been embroiled in immigration controversies that have led to fans, players, and even a top match official being denied entry. A Somali referee named Omar Artan was turned away at Miami International Airport. The Mirror, the BBC, CBS News, the Associated Press, Al Jazeera, and Reuters have all reported on his case. He was a FIFA-approved match official. He was sent home. The American broadcaster carrying these stories to the largest English-speaking audience in the world is the same broadcaster that paid $485 million for the rights and then was excused from a rules violation by the governing body that handed it the deal. You see the image now. You see how tightly the threads are wound. Here is the part that should make you uncomfortable, regardless of which side of any specific controversy you sit on. A broadcast partner that paid below market for the rights has commercial reasons to keep the institutional narrative friendly. The institution that gave the broadcaster the favorable deal has reasons to keep the broadcaster engaged for the next cycle. Both sides have financial incentives to soften the coverage of any controversy that might damage the property they are both selling. That is not a conspiracy. That is corporate alignment. But it is the kind of alignment that makes critical journalism harder, not easier. It is the kind of alignment that makes a hydration break violation a footnote instead of a headline. It is the kind of alignment that makes the average American viewer less likely to hear about the Omar Artan case during the broadcast, and more likely to hear about it from outlets like the BBC, Reuters, Al Jazeera, and the New York Times, which is to say from outside the tournament's primary American broadcast partner. Think about what that means for the public understanding of this tournament. The biggest audience watching this World Cup in the host country may be receiving the smoothest version of the story. The hardest questions may be appearing in places they do not regularly read. The institution and the broadcaster, locked in a deal they both have reason to protect, are not the people who will tell you about empty seats in their own stadium or denied entries at their own ports. $485 million. The image. Hold it. Here is one more strand, because the image only gets sharper. According to multiple business publications, including Fortune, FIFA is on track for around $871 million in expanded tournament revenue compared to the $440 million from Qatar. $871 million, nearly double the Qatar cycle. New sponsorships, new ticket revenue, new merchandising, new broadcast deals around the rest of the world. So the broadcaster paid less than fair value. The institution earned more than ever before, and the rules, when they were broken, were not enforced. 3 facts. 1 image. Football, in 2026, has become a multi-billion-dollar property whose largest broadcast partner is also its quietest critic. That is not a partnership of equals. That is a vertical relationship dressed in horizontal language. Now think about what this tells us about the future of the sport. Broadcast rights are the financial spine of modern football. The Premier League is built on them. The Champions League is built on them. The World Cup, increasingly, is built on them. When a single rights deal can lock a network into a favorable position for a full cycle, the network has every incentive to protect the property and almost no incentive to investigate it. And when the institution selling the property has every incentive to keep the deal friendly. The institutional accountability that football fans should be able to expect quietly erodes. The $485 million deal is not just a number. It is the architecture of how this World Cup gets shown to the world. There is also a question that almost no one is asking out loud, and it deserves to be asked. The $485 million figure dates back to a deal signed years before the current tournament cycle. That number, at the time it was set, may have been closer to market value than it is now. The growth of the United States soccer market, driven by Major League Soccer expansion, by the immigration of football fans from Latin America and Africa, by the rise of streaming, and by the cultural arrival of the sport in cities like Atlanta, Cincinnati, and Nashville, has dramatically outpaced what anyone in the original deal could have predicted. The fair market value of the rights, by the time the games actually aired, was vastly higher than the contract assumed. The deal looked reasonable when it was made. It looks like a giveaway in hindsight. That distinction matters, because it explains some of the bitterness in critical coverage. Reporters who cover the sport in the United States have watched a market they care about hand its largest moment to a broadcast partner that, by the original logic of the deal, was paying close to fair value at the time. The math has moved underneath the deal has not moved with the math. And the public, watching games on Fox channels this summer, is the audience whose own market growth created the gap that the broadcaster now benefits from without having to pay for it. Hold the image one more time. A broadcaster that paid less than half of fair market value. A governing body that did not enforce its own rules. A tournament being covered, in the host country, by a partner with every reason to keep the story comfortable. That is the image. Now ask yourself what it tells you about the future of the sport. It tells you that the next World Cup negotiation will be even more lopsided, because the precedent has been set. It tells you that critical coverage of FIFA in the United States will continue to come from outside the broadcast partner, not inside it. It tells you that the regulatory rules of football, in this era, are negotiable based on the size of the check the rule breaker once wrote. And it tells you that the average fan watching the tournament on a Saturday afternoon is not, by accident, hearing about most of the controversies that are shaping the legacy of this competition. The picture is on the table. You decide what it shows. What do you think? Should FIFA have punished Fox for the hydration break violation to set a public standard? Or was looking the other way the correct business decision given the broadcast partnership? I read everyone, so let me know your view. If you found this worth your time, a like helps more than you would think. Subscribe if you enjoy thoughtful football coverage. Football at this scale is never just a tournament. It is a moment in time.